Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi, I'm Dale Beaumont and welcome to Secrets Exposed. This is the show that takes you up close and personal with world-leading business experts. And our topic for this interview is the Getting Started Guide to Franchising Your Business. That coming up in just a moment. My special guest today is international franchising expert Brian Keane, and we're going to be talking about the Getting Started Guide to Franchising Your Business. Now, this is going to be an in-depth interview. We'll be chatting for around 45 minutes, and that'll give us a whole bunch of time to dive into this subject and to help you answer some of your biggest burning questions about, is franchising right for your business? And if it is, how to go about doing it right. Brian, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Tell us a bit about yourself and where you've come from and your kind of upbringing.
Oh, my origin, I was born in the UK, played on the bomb sites after the Second World War. I was a quantity surveyor and then emigrated to Africa in the mid-60s, spent 10 years there. Started 4 companies in my 20s, building company and import company and so forth, then emigrated to Western Australia in 1975 with a young family, where I went back into the building industry and hit some hard economic times in the early 80s, interest rates to 23%, and I moved into franchising, totally against all my instincts.
All right, so let's talk about franchising, because now it's been a part of your life for the last sort of 30 years. So what is franchising all about for people that may not be familiar with the term?
It's a simple way of growing your business by replicating it, by doing more of the same, but even simpler. So stripping what you do down to the barest minimum and then training other people to do it successfully. And in that process, elevating yourself to being a leader and enthusing and supporting and encouraging people to grow.
Now, when most people think about franchising, they think about McDonald's or Subway, and they kind of think that maybe McDonald's invented franchising, but franchising was around a long time before McDonald's. Where did franchising actually come about? What's the history of franchising?
We go back, actually the Romans were involved in franchising in the Middle Ages. The serfs would be given a franchise to be able to work a garden, to work some area. And then in the mid-1850s, the Singer sewing machine company in America was growing rapidly with the Industrial Revolution. They were selling their machines across the country, had no way of servicing. So they started franchising out the servicing, and then gradually they serviced out the sales. And that was really the start, internationally, of franchising.
Okay, and what makes franchising? I know it's an interesting sort of a question, but it's different to just setting up your business in a new location. It's a different kind of a model. So what makes it fall into that category?
I suppose you've got the rights to use a franchise system, a business format franchise system as it's called, and that means you don't actually own the business in the long term. You've got it for a period of time, so you're almost leasing it. It's rather like having a property. If you've got an office you rent, you have a franchise and you lease it effectively for a period of time.
So it gives you the ability to run a business within a business effectively, but for a limited period of time. So you don't actually fully own the business. You just have the rights to be able to conduct business with that name and with that brand in that location. Is that correct?
That's right. And since it started to really evolve in the 1950s after the Second World War, and that was with the advent really of commercialization in America and then later in Europe, what's happened is it's become more and more refined, more, I suppose in some respects the process has been simplified, but the procedures have been more elaborate and more comprehensive, so it defines more and more what a franchise can do, what a franchisee can do, and it gives more and more commercial scope. So the opportunities these days are vast for anybody in franchising.
And the difference from a business owner is that these people that become, the other term is franchisees, so you have the franchisor, who's the person that created the franchise, and then you have franchisees who actually are the ones renting that business effectively. So when we talk about franchisees, franchisors, how's it different to licensing?
Okay, well, franchising is licensing. It's just a method of licensing, and in recent decades it's become known more as franchising because it's been defined in some countries by legislation. So whereas any form of franchising was a license, these days in a lot of parts of the world, it's actually defined specifically what is a franchise. So you may think you've got a license. People think licensing is simpler. Not necessarily the case. But if the legislation prescribes that it's a franchise, then you have to comply with legislation.
Okay, and these franchisees, the thing that makes it different is that they're not employees of the business in the traditional way that you would normally expand, right? These are effectively people running their own business and paying themselves their own salaries. Explain how that works.
Well, that's the key to the success of franchising. One expression that's fairly commonly used is they got some skin in the game. So I've seen many examples, both myself and with franchise companies I've worked with, where perhaps one of their employees has bought a franchise, and then the owner complains after 6 months that they've increased the business by 20 or 30%. They didn't do that when they were employees, because they got a vested interest, and yes, they put money into the business. It just changes everyone's attitude.
All right, so let's talk about why a business owner would want to think about franchising as opposed to just expanding in the traditional sense. And this is where I suppose it is a little bit counterintuitive, because if you think, well, if I give them the ability to actually run their own business, they're going to be earning more money, and that'd actually be cheaper if I keep them as an employee, because they'll be earning less money and I'll be making more money. But as you've just pointed out, that's not the case, right?
No, if you want to grow your own business, you've got to look for more capital to invest. And that means with every time you expand your business, there's more risk. The point with franchising, someone else is carrying the risk to a fair degree, and also they're contributing capital because they're paying an initial franchise fee, a right to an opportunity to profit, if you like, to join the group. Plus they're putting all their energies focused on that business, as opposed to you, because you're being spread, your energy is being spread, your attention's being spread over a whole range of areas of the business. If you want to grow it, then the easiest thing is, with the franchising example, is to hive off the areas that can be replicated, and that's what you franchise. And you look after what you're best at and which you need to do with the franchise group, which is areas like leadership and marketing and so forth.
All right, so let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. So you've mentioned about capital. So the traditional way would either be grow slowly, because you only have a limited amount of capital, and say open one location each year if you're having to fund it yourself. Or you could go to a bank, and the banks could actually give you money, but now you take on a whole lot of debt and a whole lot of risk. So these franchisees, they're paying an upfront fee, are they? Which actually effectively pays for some of the setup costs. And when it comes to if they have a fixed location, who pays for the fit out? Do you pay for the fit out of their franchise fee, or do they pay for it as well?
One of the great things about franchising is there are no rules. Apart from having to comply with legislation in various states in America or in Australia and some places in Europe, you can create a franchise model however you wish. So there are conformities, I suppose, and people think there's a rule book that you should charge 10% ongoing fees and 30,000 or 100,000 your upfront fees, but really all it comes down to is making sure it's an economically viable model for everybody, and you give them the potential for growth, and you unlock the potential for growing the whole system. That's it in a nutshell.
So when it comes to those rules, we talk about nothing is set in stone, right? You can really decide how you want it to be, and it's really like what's a property worth. It's what someone's willing to pay, and it's the same in terms of setting up the opportunity. It's what's that opportunity worth to the market, and who's prepared to pay for it.
Exactly. Willing buyer, willing seller. Does it make sense? Is it economically viable? And the thing always is, as with any business transaction, does your accountant like it? Does your mother-in-law and the fellow next door like it as well? Because you've got to get endorsement from other people, and that's
so
one of
your
the
accountant's got to
challenges.
like the numbers. Your mother-in-law's got to believe that you're doing the right thing by people, and it's good for everybody. And the third one, well, would your neighbour want to invest in it or become a franchise owner?
Well, I suppose I call the term the black hatters. Invariably people discourage us as human beings rather than encourage us.
Yes.
And so if you want to go into franchising, you need to be pretty convinced that it's the right thing for you, so you're able to convince the soothsayers and go ahead on your own account and take the opportunity.
All right, this is a big question. I know there'll be a lot of people
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.